The story begins before he was even born, with a grandmother sneaking onto a bus in Morocco. Her name was Fatima. Decades ago, she left everything behind and made her way to Mataró, a modest coastal town near Barcelona, arriving with almost nothing. Once there, she worked 3 jobs at once, not for herself, but to save enough money to bring her son over from Morocco. He arrived at the age of 3. That boy grew up to become Mamer Nasraoui, and he would later fall in love with a woman named Sheila Abana, who had made her own long journey to Spain from Equatorial Guinea and worked as a waitress to get by. The couple settled in Rocafonda, a working-class neighborhood in Mataró, in an apartment so small that the kitchen and the bedroom were essentially the same room. Money was tight enough that, before their son was born, 2 neighbors stepped in to help the young family cover rent. Grateful, the parents decided to name their newborn after both men, combining their names into one. That is how, on July 13, 2007, a boy came into the world carrying the name Lamine Yamal Nasraoui, EBAN. His parents separated when he was about 3 years old. His mother moved with him to a nearby town called Granollers, while his father stayed in Mataró. From then on, the boy split his childhood between 2 cities, shuttling back and forth, but Rocafonda never stopped being home. His grandmother still lived there. His father still lived there. And it was there, at the age of 6, that scouts from FC Barcelona's academy first noticed him playing. The academy was called La Masia, and by that point, it had already produced some of the greatest players the sport had ever seen. Getting scouted by La Masia at 6 years old was, in itself, remarkable. What happened next was not. Over the following years, he moved through every age group faster than the system was built to move a child. Coaches who worked with him at 11 and 12 years old would later describe watching him do things on a football pitch. They didn't think an 11-year-old's body was capable of doing by age 15. Something unusual was happening. He was training with the adult first team, an informal blurring of the line between youth academy and professional squad that nobody had officially decided to allow, but that nobody was stopping either. Then, on April 29, 2023, it became official. Barcelona needed fresh legs late in a match against Real Betis, and the coaching staff sent him on. At that exact moment, he was 15 years and 290 days old. With that single substitution, he broke a club debut record that had stood since the 1920s. It could have ended there. As a nice story and nothing more. It didn single quotes T. 4 months later in August 2023. The club made a decision few academies would have made with a 15-year-old. Instead of easing him in slowly, they started him in the season's opening match. He became the youngest player to start a Spanish top-flight league match in the 21st century. 2 months after that, in October 2023, playing away against Granada, he scored his first goal for the club. At 16 years and 87 days old, it made him the youngest goal scorer in the history of Spain's top division, beating a record that had stood for more than a decade. Later that same month, he played in El Clásico, the fixture layered with more than a century of rivalry between Barcelona and Real Madrid, becoming the youngest player ever to appear in it. By September, the story had already outgrown club football. Spain's national team, coming into a European Championship qualifying match, brought him on as a substitute. At 16 years and 57 days old, he became the youngest player ever to appear for Spain's senior men's team. In the same match, he scored, becoming the country's youngest goal scorer as well. The following summer, in 2024, Spain traveled to Germany for the European Championship, and the 17-year-old was not a bystander. He played a central role as Spain won the tournament, scoring a spectacular goal in the semifinal against France on the eve of his 17th birthday. He lifted the trophy days later. It was, at the time, the biggest achievement of his career, and he had reached it before most people his age had taken a driving test. Fame at that scale came with a cost his family had not signed up for. In August 2024, only weeks after the European Championship victory, his father was attacked and stabbed multiple times in a parking lot in Rocafonda while walking his dog. The attack made international headlines specifically because of who his son had become. The neighborhood that once quietly helped a struggling young couple pay rent was now watched by cameras every time something happened there. Through it all, he kept one small physical link to where he came from. After every goal, he holds up his fingers to form the number 304, the final digits of Rocafonda's postal code. a private tribute broadcast to millions of people who have never set foot in the neighborhood. The years that followed brought more of the same pattern. Another title with Barcelona. Individual awards recognizing him as the best young player in the world. A contract extension with the club running all the way to 2031, agreed while he was still a teenager. Each new milestone required institutions built around gradual, cautious development, clubs, federations, sponsors, media departments to quietly adjust procedures that had never been designed. With someone like him in mind, then came the summer of 2026. And the tournament every young footballer dreams about, but almost none reach so young. The World Cup, hosted jointly across the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Spain entered as one of the favorites, and their 18-year-old winger entered as one of the most closely watched players in the entire competition. He opened his scoring account early, finding the net just 10 minutes into his first real involvement in Spain's second group match against Saudi Arabia in Atlanta. As the tournament advanced, so did the records. He turned 19 on the eve of Spain's semi-final against France, and treated it as a birthday request rather than a milestone, telling reporters the best gift would be a win and a trip to the final in New York. Spain delivered exactly that, dismantling France to reach the championship match. In the semifinal itself, at 19 years and 1 day old, he won a penalty during a World Cup knockout match, becoming only the second player in 60 years to do so at such a young age, trailing only a record set by Michael Owen back in 1998. On July 19, 2026, in East Rutherford, New Jersey, Spain faced Argentina in the World Cup final. Spain won 1-0. In the aftermath, Lionel Messi, playing in what many expected to be his final World Cup, was seen congratulating the teenager who had just become the youngest player in history to win both a European Championship and a World Cup. Yamal later said the moment, and the advice Messi gave him afterward, meant as much to him as the trophy itself. On social media, his own reaction to the achievement was simple: almost completed the set. Barely 3 years had passed since the substitution against Real Betis broke a century-old club record. In that time, a boy from a cramped apartment in Rocafonda, named after two generous neighbors, raised between two cities by parents who had themselves crossed oceans to build a life in Spain, had become a European champion and a world champion before the age most people finish university. None of the institutions around him, not La Masia, not Barcelona's first team, not Spain's federation, had a playbook ready for someone who developed this quickly. They built one anyway, one exception at a time, adjusting contracts, adjusting selection policies, adjusting media protocols for a player still legally a minor when the adjustments began. What happened on the pitch was extraordinary. What happened around him quietly in boardrooms and coaching offices that never made headlines was an entire system slowly rewriting its own assumptions to keep up with one teenager from Rocafonda, who simply refused to wait his turn.